Welcome to a special edition of the BioCentury This Week podcast. We're now in our 7th season, and it's the first time we've done this from the sidelines of the JP Healthcare Conference. Now, JPM this year, shockingly, kicked out with some sunny skies and more financial momentum than we've seen in, I can't even remember, it's been so long. Plus, we had more than 25 biotech deals, some M&A as well. Deals of note, as this is the East-West reception after all. RemeGen's $650 million upfront deal for a bispecific with AbbVie. And we saw a newcomer to the NewCo model game, Xiao. They partnered up with a syndicate led by Fraser Ventures to launch a new COPD company backed by, $200 million, I believe it was. So joining me today, we're going to have two sets of guests. I'll introduce them all. We have James Huang, founder and managing partner of Panacea Venture, which has a footprint in the US, Europe, and China. We'd like to thank James, who's put this party on with us for about a dozen years now. Ingrid Yin will be joining us. She's co-founder and managing partner at MayTech Global, which also has been putting on this party for a dozen years with us. So thanks to Ingrid and James. And we have Matt Gardner. He's head of Life Sciences Americas for CBRE. And joining us in the second segment will be Ting Xiao, partner, regional life sciences lead at DLA Piper, coming all the way from Shanghai. She gets bonus points for that. And jet lag points, of course. All right, well, Simone, you've been busy writing your annual letter from the editor, and you struck sort of a optimistic tone this time around, and I'm wondering, I'm an optimist by nature, and so I'm kind of like, it's going to be good this year. And, well, we've had a few rough years. Maybe it's the Jeff jinx. I don't know. But, Simone, is there reason to be feeling different this year as we head into the JP Morgan conference?
Thanks, Jeff. And thanks, everyone. It's great to be here. And for those of you not here, we do all each have a glass of wine. So cheers, everybody. Cheers to a good year. Thank you. It's interesting you say that, Jeff, because you may know this. My husband is actually my first reviewer on some things that I write. And he looked at it and he goes, wow, that's really negative. How can you do that? And I said, well, I was being as optimistic as I could. So I think it's a little bit in the eye of the beholder. We do really think that there's a sort of split screen going on in 2026. And I'm just going to talk about a few of the things that are our themes for this year at BioCentury and things that we'll be looking at. I think in the second half of this podcast, we're going to talk more about the capital markets. But clearly, we ended 2025 with a lot of verve and momentum and, certainly in the follow-ons and really a robust year for M&A. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later. I don't know that I would call this an optimistic or a pessimistic thing, but a major theme for us in 2026 is the issue of speed to first-in-human trials. I think that what 2025 did was China just completely changed the global conversation about that, and other countries in the world have realized that that is and should be an incentive for them or a motivation for them to address their pathways. But globally, innovators and investors are sort of frustrated that in the US you can't do that fast enough. So the global footprint of faster first-in-human is something we're going to be watching. Talking of global, we are looking at, you've done a very nice story on Japan. We will be holding our East-West conference in Korea. We've previously done one in Singapore. We are always looking for where's the next hotbed of innovation. I think it's a given that China is a hotbed. And then just on the R&D front, a few things we're looking at. Talking to my colleague Selena here, and we've even seen deals today. Brain shuttles is going to be a big conversation in 2026 and hopefully beyond. Denali's brain shuttle-enabled molecule may get approval this year, and that would be a first for the technology. And there are various other deals and programs going forward there. We also have a big eye on protein degradation pathways, targeted protein degradation, which has been around also for a long time, but seems to be making new ground also potentially with an approval this year. And then one more thing I want to talk about, in particular with respect to China, is RNAi. And we really feel that this was something that came up at our China conference, this thread. And you're nodding, James, so maybe you're going to talk about it. But really seeing China companies start to turn their incredible skills to a technology, RNAi, that's pretty well validated now commercially and scientifically and clinically. And, there's tremendous target space there. So we think that that's really an area to keep watching. And there have been some deals in that space as well. I'm not going to spend long on the other darker screen, which is still an overhang of risk.
We had the Lord of Darkness on the regular podcast this morning. That's
I'll leave it there, yeah.
Our Washington editor, Steve Usden, who hasn't been as chipper as he used to be. I wonder why. Why don't we, James was nodding along there when you brought up RNA. James, Matt, and I had a good prep call, and we were talking about all sorts of things. Price points for assets, why we don't see M&A happening from west to east. James, why don't you just jump in where you're excited to jump in?
Boy, yeah, there's so many topics we can talk about. So big picture view, let's say RNAi. This is a good demonstration what China is all about. You see, during COVID, China had no access to BioNTech and Moderna. And what we saw during that period of time in 2020 was this huge rush of companies going to RNAi. If I were to look at today, what they've accomplished in the last 5 years, and we track these companies, I can easily point to more than 50 of these companies. That is astonishing if you think about it, right? Because the whole field in RNAi, it took us in the United States a good solid 20 plus years to get to a group of very, very good companies. So what's so interesting about China is that you have such good infrastructure, good chemists, good biologists, and that you can get from the initial discovery stage to going through the animal studies into initial proof of concept in man now in less than 2 years. Even though, I don't know if you guys have noticed, all these AI discovery companies in the United States, they've been talking in the past couple of years, gosh, they can do something, get stuff in the molecule, into clinic in less than 12 months. Show me even a single company can do that. But yet in China, we're seeing companies going to new modalities, they create molecules, and they're doing it on average less than $2 million per molecule. Into animal studies, into clinic. It's such amazing speed.
Can I just follow up on that?
Yeah.
And I think that there are two really interesting parts or important parts of this. One is that innovators in the West are very aware of China innovation in antibodies and in small molecules. And some of them, because of that speed, are staying in stealth for much longer because they really are worried, right? I don't think that they've quite yet caught on to the fact that siRNA, or which can be antisense or antisense or siRNA for RNAi, can actually represent the next area. So I think that that idea of China become a powerhouse there has not yet really penetrated, which is why we talk about it. So we feel like people should know that. But the other part of it is what we see. It kind of goes hand in hand with gene therapies, where as gene therapies are faltering for various, you're nodding here, we'll bring you in a minute, as they've got various both commercial and clinical issues, RNAi offers this, maybe twice a year, much lower risk way of still getting at the genetic, it's still a genetic treatment, as it were, and you're still getting at that space. And so it's sort of, having become validated, it's now entering new areas and taking on, new potential.
Yeah, I just wanted to offer to be the club historian for a second, because I think, you look at any emerging technology in our industry, and it's actually takes quite a long time to get onto the perfected path. And I'll offer a couple examples. I think we could have looked back at monoclonals, and they didn't just immediately hit. It took a long time to figure out why things weren't, being accepted, and we had to sort of work on humanizing and then fully human. And now we've got a couple of the biggest royalty machines in the industry that were born in the East Bay here that I think both live in Tahoe now.
Yep.
But I think,
On the Nevada side.
yes, on the Nevada side, yes. So, I think the way that technology progresses is a pretty close parallel to how we saw gene therapy get completely interrupted in the 1990s and take quite a long time to work its way back and needed a lot of help from sort of novel changes in the whole process to get back to, CRISPR was one very important Nobel Prize winning step, but it was just one step. There were many things that came before and things that followed. So I think you could look at any sort of the broad segments, the product areas, and see that kind of long curve to the narrative. And I think it does take a long time. The aspect of that I think is that we touched on a little bit, and I always love talking to James about these things. He's so creative and he's seen everything. Is I think if we look back at last year, Merck was first out of the gates with the deal, right? So if you look at that Merck deal and you look at the sort of the cost per molecule that we're thinking about as a frame for the industry, this is a redefining equation at the moment. And I think AI should push that down, but at the moment, all it's led to is increased cost because they're all investing in compute power. And so we haven't actually seen the dynamic change in the discovery model yet, and I think it's still in front of us somewhere.
We haven't done data centers on the podcast before, And
We haven't. I sense a return guest in the making here. Josh, I want to bring you into the conversation. What's on your mind?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. And first off, honored to share the stage with good friends here. And, James and Ingrid have been co-hosting this reception with us for 12 years. So unbelievable how much has changed. But if you think about it, 12 years ago when we started this reception, this is kind of what I was thinking today when I was wandering around Union Square, beautiful day today, and I look up and I see a billboard for in silico medicine on Union Square, and
Did Alex put it up himself?
He might have climbed up there and put it up or had one of his AI agents do it. But I think it really speaks to how much the industry has changed and how much the China story has also changed over the last 12 years, even over the last year, because in silico was one of the companies that IPO'd last year on Hong Kong, very end of last year. And the Hong Kong exchange actually has not been in a bear market. And a lot of folks here are now sort of thinking about, are we getting out of a bear market here? But I think that you have some of these companies. I saw another one of these trucks, electronic billboards driving around Union Square from GenScript.
Yep.
And so it's like you have these companies that I know, James, very well, but having a huge presence here this year at JP Morgan. And I felt like last year was really the first year that everyone sort of woke up to China. All of a sudden, everyone was talking about it in the hallways, whereas before it was only during, some of the sort of the Bay Helix meeting and a few other meetings where that was sort of the normal thing. So it's just amazing how much things have changed, I think, in 1 year.
Can I ask you guys a question about AI, right? I'm sorry to hijack you.
No, that's fine. I do want to talk about deal price points, though, after this. We have a few more minutes with these excellent gentlemen, but go for it.
Josh talked about how last year sort of everyone woke up to China, and this year I think there's a lot of questions about AI, and, I'm not sure which is the year. I'm not sure that there's going to be any 1 year that we say that was the year, right? I feel it's 1 year. But a couple of the conversations that I've had in the last few days, especially with pharma companies, is that as they bring in AI across the board, right, from discovery all the way through clinical, or through, I guess, commercial, what they find in terms of processes is that you solve one part of a workflow with AI, and now you've just created a bottleneck. So let's say, you're coming up with all these targets, but now the next part isn't actually optimized. And so it's actually a huge dance and choreography. And, that is a thing that I think is, probably going to be more prevalent in the large companies. But you're in charge of small companies, and I'm sort of wondering if that's how much you think that is going to be an issue, how holistic people can be in their adoption of this. And, as you create companies, what do you think, what are your expectations for them?
When we make investments in companies, we make sure that AI discovery is truly part of what they do. That's very important. But, coming back to making an actual investment in an AI company, we don't do that. It's so interesting because I spent yesterday, two of the firms I really good meeting with yesterday, these are tech-backed type of venture firm. But they have tiptoed away into biotech the last couple of years. But you look at most of their investments, they're all in AI. It's so interesting because what I learned from both of them were exactly the same thing, which is that they have made so much paper profit in AI, but it's all on the tech side. But on the biotech side, nothing. And they were talking about truly an IRR comparison, right? On the tech side, the IRR is like close to 200%. But on the biotech side, negative. It's fascinating. Which actually tells you something about AI in our industry. We truly need AI. However, the problems we're trying to solve is so complex. And like you said, the bottleneck, actually, as we learn from AI discovery into development, the biggest bottleneck, believe it or not, is actually clinical trials. It's taken longer than it's ever been, and we truly need AI somehow.
I'm going to jump right in there, James. I think that's exactly right. I think I'm going to offer to be club historian again. Because we should have been, I would argue, a pretty sharp and pointy end of this by now with cancer data. We've had the Cancer Genome Project for long enough. I think it lives at Santa Cruz, right? So we've had this kind of data accumulated for well over a decade already, so going on 15 years. ASCO itself launched something called Cancer Link many, many years ago. I think it was at ASCO 2012 or 2013. I think to James's exact point, it just proves how hard this is, even when you have a known universe of patients and outcomes and genomic profiles, it's still extremely difficult to build the proof case, even when you can feed all that into your model. So I think we still have great challenges right in front of us. One of the things that I think is so exciting is what we've seen in sort of the discovery method evolving recently, the FDA taking some animal testing out of the equation, and the tremendous leap in organoids. You put those things together, and the amount of screening you can do goes way through the roof. And I think that's a great application for all that high throughput computing.
Well, we're about to jump to the second segment in just a minute, but James, I did want to get your take on comparative upfront payments, deal prices between West and East.
Sure. If you take a close look at the deals that have been done by Big Pharma with biotechs in China, you will find majority of the deals are with these much more mature, publicly traded companies. They have platform, and they're focusing on different modalities. And the development package is extremely complete, right? So these are what I call low-hanging fruit, and that's easy to go through. Then you start looking at the next tier down, some of the deals. Then you will notice that the upfront payment dropped significantly. Now, this is one of the reasons why I continue to feel that if you invest in China versus you invest in the US, one of the biggest differences you will see is that the big pharma will continue to buy US-based companies, but they will not buy China-based companies because they can pick up assets so much cheaper. To the point where, as venture capitalists, we start to have to ask ourselves a question. If I'm making an investment into an innovative US-based biotech company at a valuation, let's say 50 to 70 million bucks, yet I can pick up assets in China with proof of concept in human, whether they're IIT studies or they're already in phase 1, at much lower valuation. Now, that's what we're seeing at the marketplace. The opportunity in China, from big pharma perspective, from investor perspective, you're seeing a lot of very interesting proof of concept already in human at a valuation so much more reasonable. And that's why I think for early stage investments with these innovative technology coming out of universities, what entrepreneurs have come up with, the valuation in the US is truly a challenge.
Can I add one point?
Quickly.
So, some of our conversations also have talked to the fact that when a pharma licenses from a China company, very often the China company keeps the China rights, right? Now, it used to be that the farmers would go in and they would get the molecule and they might even commercialize it and work on it there for China. Now, what we're sort of hearing is that there is a benefit to them, to the pharma, in leaving the China company with the China rights, because that China company now will take the same molecule and it will test it much faster in many new indications. Yeah. And so they're carrying on doing the learning from the very fact that they've just licensed this molecule and left it in their hands, as it were, locally.
And that's how the AbbVie deal was today.
Exactly right.
That is exactly how the AbbVie deal was today.
And also from big pharma perspective, people forget is the pricing pressure within China for innovative drugs. I mean, who the heck sell PD-1s at $5,000 per patient per year? You don't see that. That's just such a small percentage of what we charge in the United States, right? And so from big pharma perspective, if the partner can generate so much more data, proof of concept for them to think about, well, now in the West, what we should bet on, makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah, I mean, James, do you think that's going to ever change? I mean, you have China biotechs that pretty much have to go outside of China in order to get an ROI, right? Because of the low pricing in China.
Very good. So we've been spending since November talking a lot to the large domestic Chinese pharmas. And there were so much assumption about the fact that if I do the pivotal study in China in phase 3, well, I can go ahead and do a bridging study, come into the US, right? I'm going to tell you, under the new FDA leadership, people better think long and hard. I am not sure with this new leadership, what we assume just even 12 months ago is going to be the way going forward, okay? And so because of that, the uncertainty and the headwind that's now produced with the new leadership, I'm much more cautious. And I truly believe for China-based large companies, because of the financial resources they have, you will actually see them tiptoe their way to do these earlier clinical studies also in the United States, not just in China.
Something tells me our Washington editor and noted spy writer got through to you and convinced you to make one of his points when he couldn't be here today. All right, we're going to leave it there. Matt, James, thank you so much. We're going to take a quick break, and you'll get to hear, at least listeners out there, will get to hear about our upcoming East-West Summit in Seoul. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you. That was great.
BioCentury This Week is brought to you by the 5th East-West Biopharma Summit in South Korea. An arc of innovation is emerging across Asia, and Western biopharma leaders are taking note, from cross-border deals to new co's. In March 2026, the 5th BioCentury Bay Helix East-West Biopharma Summit visits South Korea for the first time. Meet the biopharma leaders putting Korea innovation on the global map. Learn why Korea has become a clinical trial and manufacturing hub. Discover if Korea is the next hotspot for new co-formation. Plus meet biopharma innovators from India to Singapore to China and Japan. Register now at biocenturyeastwest.com.
Okay, we are back, and as you heard just then, BioCentury's East-West Summit coming up in Seoul. Josh, you want to give it a quick plug?
Yeah, March 9th to 11th. We really have been out to Korea a few times over the last few years, really seeing some interesting companies, and we'd love to have you all come out and see Korea for yourself. Also see a lot of great companies from the region, including Japan and China. So please check it out, biocenturyeastwest.com.
And we are almost sold out of presenting company slots, but there are plenty of room for more delegates, especially aspiring karaoke singers. Apparently that's a thing. But of course in Korea it's Norabang, from what I understand. Okay, well now we have Ingrid has arrived after battling the Waymos and the Uber drivers and the streetcars of San Francisco. Ingrid, of course, from MayTech Global, a longtime host of this meeting along with James and BioCentury. And Ting has been waiting patiently, jet-lagged, but still standing. We're going to turn to the public market outlook, which Ingrid has been following closely for a very long time. Ingrid, what's your outlook for this year in the public markets in biotech?
Yeah, to talk about this year, we can't miss what happened in the past several years. And there was certainly a winter period in the healthcare sector. But I think we start to see the great thaw of, Ice Age starting second half last year. And you start to see, investor coming back because, the sector is well positioned, and a lot of companies went from hype phase and to really starting to deliver operation excellence. And just from today's pre-announcement and guidance for the year from all the companies that presented at JP Morgan conference, and the overall tone is very positive. A lot of companies, pre-announced really good result and then have really good above consensus, guidance for the year.
Ingrid, let me ask you. So one of the big questions, of course, is how sustainable this is. And, for quite a while now, BioCentury has been writing, we really think we're coming out of the woods now. And it sort of sputters out. And so one is, what is the basis of the feeling that this is more sustainable than last time? And the second is, how vulnerable is this to macro effects like an AI bubble bursting and the whole market going down? So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. First of all, I think despite the capital raising difficulties in the past several years, despite some stock price corrections, innovations continue to happen. And all these healthcare companies, they didn't stop, pushing forward, what they're working on. So I think in 2020 and 2021, there was a lot of excitement in the healthcare sector. Vaccines and all these products that's dealing with COVID, that so much capital went into this sector. And so many companies got bought. But I do think that bubble, that went away, and now we're standing at a much more solid ground. And talking about AI, I really don't believe, we as MayTech as a firm, we don't believe it's a bubble. And we do see it's happening in a big way. The productivity, efficiency in the healthcare sector. I'm sure you've seen the announcement by Lilly and NVIDIA today. And they're putting in $1 billion into the lab in Bay Area to use AI to help drug discovery. So that tells you, with such a big number of capital involved, they really went from pilot phase, testing AI, how to do drug development and all that, and it's becoming real program going forward. I mean, it's for next 5 years. We'll find out as this progress, but this is a very big, important, I would say, leading indicator for the space. I think technology is going to help healthcare tremendously. I mean, it's in every country. I don't know if you guys read the article on New York Times talking about Baba's AI model, AI imaging, help to detect pancreatic cancer. That's on the medical device side, and you see on the pharma biotech side, there's also innovations in diagnostics and genetic sequencing, and also AI has been applied to areas like manufacturing. There's also digital twin is helping, healthcare industry, both hospitals and manufacturing facilities, way faster. So I really think we went through the tough period, but then all the innovations and the solid fundamentals will push the healthcare sector perform better. And I do believe it's sustainable.
Excellent. Well, I want to bring Ting into the conversation now and get the perspective from Shanghai. And Ting, of course, is a partner at DLA Piper.
Hello, everyone. DLA Piper is a law firm, for those who does not know this name. And so I'm here as a lawyer, but then also as a former life science scientist. I was a research technician at the Chinese Academy of Sciences. And also I was working at the Princess Margaret Hospital in Canada. So I want to bring in some of because I'm hearing all the things about RNAis, all the things of how that were happening in the lab, only on my research bench to the hospitals, right? So first of all, I agree with Ingrid about the sustainability about this industry. now I'm putting on my lawyer's hat, because why is that sustainable? We need to look at the policies. We need to look at the government regulations to see where is the direction is going. That's what we call tailwind in American language, right? In China, before we all heard about notorious VBP, which is the centralized procurement. But then last year, China promulgated a commercial insurance catalog, as you may already know, that is aimed to incentivize innovations. Already, more than a dozen patented products already in the catalog. And then this is a signal also sent from the Chinese government to the market. China is not only a generic market. Actually, we also value innovation. That's one part. And then also with all the patent term extension, regulatory exclusivity coming up in China, not in some of the European jurisdictions. In China, that's actually another signal sent by the Chinese government. We value innovation. Now it's not all about generic. That's how all the innovations are taking place in China. And then another thing is that the Chinese government has spent quite some money through various mechanisms, including state-owned enterprise. They fund a PE fund. They have their venture capital to inject into the innovator companies in China. And then the industrial parks in China that are funded by the Chinese government. That's a lot of innovations are coming from those incubations. Overall, I'm optimistic, not because I was a life science scientist. I hope this industry goes for the best, because I saw the policies and then regulations and then also general government fundings going into this industry in China overall. That's a very long talk for this simple question.
All good. Josh?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's interesting, Ting. I mean, we've been following the China market for a long time, and it wasn't too long ago that the regulatory framework was actually not all that generous to innovators. So, I mean, how much of this do you think the changes, like you mentioned the some of the IP changes? I mean, how much is that sort of lobbying by the China biotechs now that want to have protection for their products to go global, essentially? So things like data exclusivity.
Yes, that's a very good question. So basically, you can imagine before it's MNCs in China trying to lobby for regulatory exclusivity and then PTEs, and then that's the minority group out of China's markets. But then nowadays, biotech and biopharmers, they are increasingly doing that. And then another, it's not about lobbying, it's about Chinese government. They want to use innovations to encourage the industries. They want to do so because there are thousands and hundreds of innovator biotechs in China already. That's already there. They want to use that to incentivize innovations. And then there are so many generics. There are way more generics in China. They want to use this method to help incentivize, transfer those generics to the innovators. So that's all the considerations. Yeah, go ahead.
I actually want to jump in, and I'm going to bring in my colleagues, Josh.
I think.
I do know you. I've met you. Pretty sure you're Josh, right? Josh, and then
it's been a long day.
It's yeah. I'm only like not even one glass
Only
in.
day
right?
one.
Yeah, only day one, and not even one glass in. Okay, so I want to bring in Josh and Jeff because, I just don't want the conversation only about China, especially in light of the fact it's the East-West conference, right?
Yeah.
And we're very much focused on where's the next hotbed of innovation going to come from. I talked earlier about our conference that you're going to talk about in South Korea. So Jeff, you've done a piece on Japan. You previously did one on Singapore. I know you're very networked and talking to a lot of people in various Asia countries. Tell me what you're seeing now in terms of the rise of innovation and even of those markets in China. And Josh, I know you're a big expert there. Maybe weigh in as well.
Yeah, well, Japan, I guess I'll touch on that as that's the most, almost the most recent story I wrote. It's
the most recent story on Japan that you wrote. Let's put
that
it
is
like that.
true,
Yeah.
and it was a year and a half in the making. As my fellow executive editor, Selena Koch, who's in the audience, will tell you. Japan's a really interesting story. Obviously, we know about all the Nobel Prizes. We know about the innovation. Japan has probably produced the second most blockbusters out of any country in the world behind the US. I'm sure China is looking to change that soon. In fact, all of those blockbusters out of Japan came from Japanese pharma, not from biotech. And so there's been this biotech scene in Japan for a long time now, but you never really hear about flashy venture rounds or big IPOs. It's almost like these companies have been set up not necessarily to fail, but not to succeed. And now we're seeing, thanks to government incentives, including a 2-for-1 matching program, to bring in VCs not only from Japan, but also around the world. We're seeing kind of a buzz of activity, and Japan's a little bit of a different nut. There's not as much of that gung-ho, cowboy, entrepreneurial spirit, I think, that you see in China or maybe even Singapore, Korea for sure. I think, years and years of working for the big company. But now younger entrepreneurs in Japan are looking over their shoulders and are like, why can't we do that too? And so we're seeing a wave of VCs like AN Ventures, led by Ken Horn, F Prime, going to Japan. And what they're doing is they're taking Japanese innovation, Japanese R&D teams, which, by the way, this shocked me, are cheaper than in China, and marrying that with U.S. venture money, U.S. management teams. And so we're going to start seeing some of these hybrid cross-border companies coming out of Japan. Josh, you want to speak
I was going to say,
Korea?
Jeff, the other thing, we were out at Bio Japan in Yokohama in October, and I just thought there was a lot of energy out there and a lot of discussion about this double matching program, which I also hear other countries are now looking at this as a potential model. But
Can you just elaborate on that? That was something I wanted to ask you. To what degree is this sort of, can I use the word viral? To what degree is this one country like looking at the mechanisms of another and, this being a trigger? Japan's been sort of on first gear, let's say, for a long while.
Very much so.
So how much is that happening?
I think it's interesting because, like Ting was just talking about, some IP reforms that happened in China, and a lot of that was based off of what was done here in the U.S. with data exclusivity, for instance. So I think traditionally folks have looked to the U.S. for regulatory pathways that they might be able to adopt for their own countries. And I find it interesting now that folks are looking at Japan as a potential model. This is a program that the Japanese government has set up to have essentially, so if you're an accredited VC investing in an accredited program, the government will come in and essentially double match it. So if you've invested $20 million in the project, the government will come in and pay $40 million, and it's essentially a grant. It's non-dilutive. And that's generating a lot of interest. And it's not just Japanese VCs, it's also the opportunity for US or European VCs. Like EQT is one of the ones that's accredited, for instance.
And sorry, let me just jump in there. And then you're saying that the actual labor is cheaper?
Yeah.
So you get, for your 20 million, you get what?
Get more bang for the buck.
You get a lot more. And so what is your feeling about the quality of the work that's getting done and the ability to construct strategies? And are they sort of bringing in Western kind of advisors and so on to help them think about what would a path to the clinic look like and so on?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, as Jeff mentioned, for many years, I think folks have wondered why there has not been a biotech industry to speak of in Japan, despite the great science, despite some of these great Japanese pharma. It just hasn't happened. And again, we'll see. No one has a crystal ball, but I got the feeling that folks are now thinking things are going to change with new funds like Ken Horn's fund that Jeff mentioned and this matching program. I couldn't believe how many Western VCs were out Bio Japan this year.
So Jeff is going to cut us off in a minute. So let me just ask you, what about Korea? Because their energy is not the problem. Let's put it that.
Energy is not a problem, and there's quite a few up and coming Korea entrepreneurs, folks like SJ at Orem Therapeutics, who's on our regional host committee for our East-West Summit that we're taking out to Seoul in March. There's just a lot of entrepreneurial spirit. And in Korea, it's a small market, so folks have to think about going global from day one. And I know, Ingrid, I know you've invested in Korea as well, so it's a story I think it's worth watching.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Almost 20 years ago, I was looking at Asia healthcare. I mean, Japan, Korea, and China, even, Southeast Asia, and looking for opportunities. I remember back then, the ranking in terms of innovation in pharma biotech industry, it's US, Europe leading, Japan is the next, Korea is after, and then China is, behind Japan, Korea. But I do think there are so many things happened in China at very, very fast pace. I mean, there are many positive policy changes that Ting talked about. And there's things like, Hong Kong market open to pre-revenue biotech companies. That generated a lot of enthusiasm and also a lot of capital poured into here. And I do think Korean pharma companies is still a driving force in more innovations. I mean, Celltrion is, Samsung Biologics. They're excellent in CMO, and there are thousands of pharma companies. M&A among Korean companies doesn't happen as often as those in the Western countries. So that's, one of the reasons. So there are certain conservative practices in the capital market, in the venture world. I would say slow down certain countries, but it's funny because we spend a lot of time looking at AI. In the AI world, it's two countries really competing. It's US and China. But I do think in healthcare, it's global. Every country is contributing their strengths into the ecosystem.
We're about at time. Sorry to jump in there. And Ting was nodding at a few of the points you were making. So Ting, do you want to give us maybe a final thought before we head to the bar and enjoy a little wine?
Yeah, sure. I'm not going to drag it long. So I just want to remind what is life science innovations? Actually, what's the source of that? I think, in my view, it's people, it's human. Before AI taking place, a lot of innovation are still driven by people. So we think about that, and then that will drive which market actually has the most potential. Okay, that's my final
Hey, that's
thoughts.
a great way to end it. All right, thank you to everyone in the audience for listening. Thanks to our listeners at home. If you like what you're hearing, like, subscribe. I'm trying to get my kids to teach me the right way to get people inspired to click. I don't know, Simone?
Skibbity.
Skibbity toilets. No, we're going to have to cut that, I think. Okay, and if you're interested in Korea, we have a great program at the Global IR meeting, which will be just down the hall tomorrow, and we'll have a few great guests, and one of them is claiming that they're going to explain how the Korean K-pop band model can save Korean biotech. All right, we'll leave it at that. Thank you so much. We'll be back next week. Kendall Square Orchestra provides the music for BioCentury This Week. The group connects science and technology professionals and other members of the greater Boston community to collaborate, innovate, and inspire through music while supporting causes related to healthcare and education.